Hello, 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 and a holy Sunday to everybody out there in cyberspace and other dimensions of space, time, frequencies that may or may not be listening. Welcome to another Sunday night edition of Free Association Radio. I'm your host, Robert Phoenix, and I am aided and abetted by the mysterious Miss E, who is in studio tonight, fueling our journey into the far reaches of experience, imagination, and hopefully return. Tonight we're going to have a really good show. We're going to have Alan Howarth on tonight, and Alan should be joining us in about 10 minutes. And Alan is one of the great sound effects wizards of Hollywood history. He is responsible for every bleep, blast, blare, and buzz you've ever heard on any of the Star Trek movies, with the exception of the latest one by J.A. Abrams. All those cool and interesting space-age sounds, Alan was the guy. He created them. In addition to his legacy with Star Trek, he is also the go-to guy for John Carpenter when it comes to sound effects for his films. And in fact, both Alan has collaborated on orchestral and soundtrack pieces for some of John's films as well. So Alan isn't just a guy that plays with, weird tweaking noises. He also makes music. And in addition to some of the scores that he's done for John Carpenter, Alan has also done music for other films that are mostly in the horror genre. And he is the main guy for some of those soundtracks, and he's a studio wizard. He's a producer, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Alan was the producer for Jaco Pastorius. We'll talk about this just to make sure that I've got it right. The tempestuous bass player who died in Miami after going into a nightclub and getting literally the hell beaten out of him. So we'll talk about Alan's production and career as a sound guy. I think he's done some road work too. Alan has tons of great stories, and we'll hear about them tonight in hopefully great detail. In addition to all these things, in the world of commercial sound effects, Alan is also a sound healer, and he has been really on the cutting edge of a lot of sound healing technologies. And tonight we're going to talk about raw music, and that's not R-A-W, that's R-A as in the Egyptian sun god. And I'll let Alan explain a lot more of this in great depth and detail, but let's just say that Alan and some of his fellow explorers in sound, people like J.J. Hurtak of the Keys to Enoch fame, have figured out that basically Western music, the scale of Western music, was off, and that we've started at A440 now, which is where A starts on the scale. And Alan and his team have basically discovered that it's closer to like A335, A336. May not seem like a lot to you, but in terms of the natural resonance of sound, it means a great deal, a lot. And we'll talk about how that affects us as a society, as a culture, as an organism. And we'll get into that a little bit later with Alan and a lot of his great stories that I'm sure you'll find fascinating. He's got a great story about They Live, with the film with Roddy Piper and Keith David, and we'll talk about that. It's about the fight scene. If you've ever seen They Live, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And Alan's got inside info on that fight scene. I'll let him share that with you. Just a few brief headlines. There's some fascinating stuff that's percolating around the world today. Stephen Hawking basically came out and said, if there are aliens out there, and he says that he's pretty sure that there are, that it would be in our best interest to not talk to them, because he thinks that there would be a greater than 50% chance that they would not have our best interest at heart. So here we are, we're talking to, theoretically, one of the smartest men in the world, and he's saying, if you see an alien, stay away. alienate them. Alienate the aliens. Make sure that they, don't have the right to pass go. Now, look, there's probably some good aliens out there, and there's good people out there, but there's probably some bad seed aliens. And let's face it. I mean, how many of us have experience discerning the good aliens from the bad aliens? Now, there may be people out there that have that experience, and that if you can call us up later and maybe fill us in on that. That'd be great. We'd like to know a good one from a bad one. Speaking of bad aliens, Cliff High at the WebBots Project sent out a really interesting post/email this last week, and he was basically saying, like, there is a word or a series of words that you can utter to somebody who is a shape-shifting, multidimensional reptile, and they'll basically turn right into a reptile before your eyes. Now, he didn't tell us what that is, and he's not even sure what that is, but he's pretty sure it exists. So maybe it's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. If anybody out there ever gets within about 10 feet of Dick Cheney, can you just say that a few times, see what happens, and see if that has some impact. On the environmental front, there are a couple of things that are really worth noting right now. First it was the bees, now it's the bats. Bats are succumbing to what is now called white noise syndrome. They don't really know what it is. They think it's some fungal infection that is basically killing off the bat population. And that's bad news. It's really bad news. I mean, bats are an incredibly important component in the in life's food chain. I mean, bats eat mosquitoes, bats eat flies, bats eat all those nasty bugs that we don't like. And if there's less bats, there's more of them. So now we're seeing impact on the bee community, now the bat community, and I just read that they're trying to kickstart this global initiative to start hunting whales again. And that's starting to froth up. And if people know anything about the whales and the role that whales perform, they are the heart chakra of the planet, the absolute heart chakra of the planet. And if we don't have whales on this planet, if we don't have dolphins on this planet, we will lose the connection between our heart chakra and our crown chakras. They are the record keepers. They are the living libraries. They are the oldest beings on this world. And there is going to be a global hunt on whales in the not-too-distant future. And related to that, perhaps, Senate Bill, I believe it's S510. So let me make sure I've got the right one. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go. S510. It is the Food Safety and Modernization Act of 2010. Food Safety and Modernization Act. Yes, they have your well-being in mind firmly entrenched in their wallets, hearts. And what this is it is a draconian and ultimately fascistic bill that will ultimately keep people from growing their own food, having farmers markets, and roadside stands. And if you are doing that, you will be fined. You will be put in jail. Why? Because it's for your own good. Only people that can create genetically modified organisms can grow food in this world. When are you people going to wake up to that? It's on the Senate floor. It is going to go through Congress. If this bill passes and there's an economic downturn and you can't buy food and you've got to grow your own food and this thing is passed, heaven help us. So if there is anything that if you wanted to fight for something, really fight for something, if you wanted to have one thing in this world count, it would be to grow your own food. Theoretically, it is a God-given right, but we don't know what deals or treaties have been made with people that Stephen Hawking says that we shouldn't be talking to. But theoretically, until we understand those things, it is. Last time I checked, we can still grow food here, and it's going to be important to hold on to that right. I urge you, please tell people about this. S510, the Food Safety Modernization Act. Look, it's going to be hard to put the brakes on this. I mean, we've got to find a way to do this. I mean, here's the problem. We are rapidly coming up on the midterms in November. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to see more people not run for re-election and retire before the midterms than at any other time in history. You're going to see a broad sweeping change, but by that time, it might be, for all intents and purposes, too late. We'll have had the Food Safety Modernization Act, perhaps the Lieberman-McCain Anti-Terrorism Act. Certainly, we'll have the whole medical reform pushed through. I mean, they're on a fast track to get as much done before November, and I'm not sure if we can threaten a lot of our representatives with not re-electing them, because I don't think a lot of them plan to be back. I think they're going to take their money and run, and some of them might even take their money and run, someplace out of this country. Maybe they'll go hang out down in, Paraguay or wherever the bushes are buying up all that water. What else is happening? Greece is starting to riot and revolt. The sanctions from the IMF are coming down. They don't like them. And you're not going to see a lot of that here in this country because they don't want to show angry people, righteously angry people. But that's happening, and this will not be the last time you'll see people in Europe take to the streets. I said it earlier in the year, back in January, that you're going to see massive protests in Spain and Italy, Greece, a lot of the Baltic countries, and that will start to spread out to some of the satellite countries like Latvia and maybe some of the stands, Kyrgyz and Kazakhstan, and the other stands. So the world is a very intense place right now, and congratulations for making it through another week. It takes commitment to be here, and it takes commitment to be here listening to the show either in real time or in podcast mode. But before we get to Alan, who I think is going to be on here in a minute or so, let me check my switchboard. There he is. Again, I want you to think about S510, look it up, and let's figure out a way to put the brakes on this thing. So, what I'm going to do before I bring Alan on? I'm going to play a little bit of his music. Here's a montage that he put together for me, and we're going to hear this just to give you a sample of what he does. And when this is over, we're going to bring Alan on. Here's his sound effects montage. All right, that was the soundtrack work of Alan Howarth. And without further ado, let's say hi to the man. Alan, how are you tonight?
Hey, Robert. Thanks for having me on tonight.
It's my pleasure. That was a pretty impressive array of music there. Can you maybe backfill a little bit of that for us and highlight some of the places that music has shown up?
Sure. That was a sequence of Halloween 4, Blue Planet Theater, which I did for the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, some cuts from a movie called They Live, that Rowdy Piper movie.
That's right.
Another one called Arcade, which is sort of another kind of a Tron movie. And the last batch was from a show called Big Trouble in Little China, which was a great Kurt Russell, Kim Cattrall movie.
That's an awesome film. That's like, I've got like my 10 sort of like, guilty favorites, and Big Trouble in Little China is like got to be in the top 5 in that one. I love that film.
Well, at the time we made it, everybody put their heart and soul into it, and then there was a marketing ploy at Fox, which just kept it from rising to its real place, but it has legs in an afterlife, and people still know it exists and enjoy it.
Yep, and it's one of those films that shows up on cable from time to time, and if you haven't seen it, it's a really magical ride, and Kurt Russell is great as, his name is Jack, right?
Yep.
And he plays, he's a trucker, and he's kind of a reluctant hero, and it's sort of this mystical, supernatural, kind of campy swashbuckling film, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's a John Carpenter film. I did at least 9 movies with John Carpenter throughout the 80s. A lot of horror shows, the Halloweens I did, Halloween 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But then also did a lot of sound effects work. I did 6 Star Trek movies, the original motion pictures with Kirk and Spock, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Poltergeist, Back to the Future 2 and 3. So I've danced between being a composer and also being a sound effects designer specialist.
So let's go back into your own personal history, and this isn't even something that, I mean, you and I have spent a fair amount of time together and talked together and hung out, but I really don't know how you got into this field. We never really covered that. What turned you on about sound effects, and when did you say, hey, this is what I want to do when I grow up?
Well, it was never anything I wanted to do when I grew up. When I was a little kid, I was going to be an artist, a painter type character. And so I spent most of grade school and high school being the president of the art class, always being one of the teacher's favorites, showing a lot of talent in art. And then as a background, my dad had an accordion, so I learned how to play the accordion, and then I went on to do the alto sax, and music was sort of a background. Well, then in about 1965, I got invited to sit into a band one night just to play like Glenn Miller music on the saxophone. And I remember at the end of that night, they handed me $80, and that was it. I sold out on art, and I went for music. So for $80, it changed my fate. Then I did the whole rock and roll thing. I made records. Our band was very popular in the northeastern Ohio area. We opened for the Cream and the Who and Steppenwolf, and we rubbed shoulders with the big boys. But in the band business, if you don't get a hit, eventually that band will break up, go on to the next thing. And I wound up going on to actually being a roadie or a road technician for a jazz band called Weather Report, a very famous jazz fusion band. And that jazz fusion band traveled all over the world. That's about 76 to 80. And then on the oddest of circumstances, this big burly biker buddy of mine named Pax Lemon, who was from Cleveland, was now working at Paramount. And there was just one day when a couple folks had a conversation about they wanted somebody who knew about synthesizers. And Pax turns around and he goes, oh, you got to talk to my buddy Alan. He knows all about that stuff. He works for Weather Report. And the two guys, a fellow named Steve Flick and Richard Anderson, look at him and go, Weather Report, is that the one at 7 o'clock or 11? Thinking that was like the weather broadcast. But nonetheless, he gave them my number, and I went down and met them, and they said, well, can you do an audition tape and make a sound effect for us? And I said, okay, what are we doing? And they say, we're doing Star Trek the Motion Picture. Can you make us the sound of the Starship Enterprise going warp 1 to warp 7? Well, we went back to my little dining room studio with a TAC 4-track and a little Prophet synthesizer, and I dialed up what I thought was the sound of the Enterprise, turned in the audition tape, and that was it. I hit a home run right out of the gate. That sound became the sound of the Enterprise, and I went on to do 6 Star Trek movies. So you never know where this is going to come from. You just follow your path, kind of follow your instincts, follow your passions, And for me, I've been very blessed in this lifetime. I wound up in the right place at the right time several times now.
Well, I mean, that's usually a pretty good sign, and I totally agree with you. I mean, none of us really have a map, and I think that, if we can get down to the corner store, and that's usually about the length of our instincts, we can just keep going, metaphorically speaking. But I think you're absolutely right. Your experience with Weather Report. I mean, I'm a big jazz fusion guy, and you and I did talk a little bit about Weather Report. Give people some insight that aren't familiar with the band about kind of who they were and how important they were, especially coming out of the world of Miles Davis and the impact that he made on the music world.
Sure. Well, the principals of Weather Report, the founding two members, was Wayne Shorter, who played with Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis, and those guys in the original Miles band. And then the keyboard player was a fellow named Joe Zawinul, who played with Cannonball Adderley and was actually an Austrian fella. And he came out of wartime Germany, having been totally trained to be a classical musician, but wanted to be a jazz guy. So he moved to New York and got into the scene. So Wayne and Joe put together this band, Weather Report, and they had an assortment of bass players and drummers throughout the length of the band. Several famous ones. Eric Gravatt. They had Undugo on the drums, Alex Acuna, Manolo Badrenia, and eventually the version that I was around had Peter Erskine on drums. And then they had several bass players, of which one was a fellow named Al Johnson, and then from Al Johnson it went to this unbelievable character named Jaco Pastorius. And he was really the Jimi Hendrix of the fretless bass guitar. He stepped up to the plate, and I was a bass player myself for a while, so I really knew what he was up to. But I remember seeing the first time he played, I just went, holy mackerel, I never even thought of that. This guy was so advanced and so lyrical, and he really made the bass guitar step out of the back line as a rhythm instrument into a lead instrument. So he was really the one person that stood up with Wayne and Joe and really made that power front line of fretless bass, saxophone, and a whole flotilla of keyboards. And that was my job, was to take care of all those analog synths. So I remember having 2 ARP 2600s and a Prophet 5 and a Rhodes and a Oberheim and a Helpless Still grand piano pickup and all kinds of processes. And the thing was a beast to travel around the world with all this fluctuations in power and current. So I was like the butler. I would set all that stuff every day, get it all tuned up, do the sound check, and then turn around and Joe Zawinul and say, okay, Joe, you can play now.
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you're touring, you're going to all these different countries, and then you've got the different outputs of, different voltages and all that stuff. And yep. I mean, it had to be an incredibly complex and detail-oriented gig. And did you ever get it wrong one night and blow up the synthesizer?
Well, actually, there was one night we played at the Beacon Theater in New York, and it was one of the early Prophet 5s. We had one of the, I think it's serial number 6 or something like that. And these were studio instruments that we were taking on the road. And I remember sitting down, setting it all up, and then we opened the thing out of the case, and all the programs were gone. And this was before backup or anything. So we literally held the door for 45 minutes for me and Joe Zawinul to reprogram the synthesizer to do the set. We got all the programming done, and all this pressure's on you, like, oh man, you got to get this right, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Got it fired up, said, okay, open the doors. Joe gets up to play the first tune, pushes the button, and the whole thing wipes its memory again.
Oh no.
Oh man, and the band's already playing. So Zawinul was really furious, but being the showman that he was, he just played every one of those synth parts on the piano that night and played the heck out of it.
I bet.
And then the funny part of the story is at the end of the night, I finally got to figure out what's going on. I opened the thing up, and a little nut had come off a back of one of the circuit boards. It was laying up on the back where the little circuit pieces are, and was shorting out, just randomly shorting out a little something across one of the backs where the memory was. So I fixed it, but boy, it was unbelievable. You get in these situations where you are the only person that's going to solve the problem, and you got thousands of people waiting for you. It's hairy.
Isn't it fascinating that just a little thing like a loose nut could completely wipe out an entire program?
That stuff was fragile. I mean, we're getting so spoiled now with this technology.
Yeah.
I've lived it from golly, the 60s to what we've got today. And it's like my daughter just got herself the state-of-the-art PC laptop. This thing's got 128 gig solid-state drive. It weighs nothing. It boots up instantly. It's never going to break unless you actually run a car over it. But
wow.
That's today. And this is an industry that just if you want to track electronics, where we've come from and where we are now, and it's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Moore's Law, it doubles every 18 months. And now there's another one where probably by 2015, the total amount of information will double daily.
Daily.
On the internet? Yeah. It's just going to go astronomical.
Wow. That is really incredible.
Shows and blogging and websites and more stuff on eBay and all the major networks jumping in now. And I was just took a meeting with a group up in San Francisco that's going to do an internet television station. So they're going to have these massive servers, much like a Netflix kind of game.
Right.
Everything will just be on demand. No nothing. You just click on it, it'll be there.
Well, I think I read something along the lines of 10 inventions that will die, or 10 things that will die in the next 20 years. And one of them was, of course, postage. The other was your TV. And I couldn't be happier if TV would die because, number one, I pay a pretty fair amount to get a lot of variety in terms of my cable access and movies. And every time I go on there, I got to tell you, there's nothing on there. Just give me the ability to get what I want, and I'll pay for it. Give me the ability to get obscure documentaries. Give me the ability to dial up foreign films, some concerts, and maybe some archival sports footage, and I'm a happy camper, and I'll pay for that. And I think ultimately, don't you think that's where it's going?
Absolutely, that's where it's going. And right here, I'm near Pasadena, California, and I've got a pretty hot DSL set up. But once they get that fiber in there, you get this Fios or the other one, I don't know what the ATN was. But once you've got onto fiber optic, this stuff is rocket stream pipeline. You could take high definition video in surround sound and it'll just come squirting right into your computer.
So well, I'm ready for it. I've got my hard drive hooked up to my flat screen, and I'm ready to play. So let's take a little shift here, Alan. And
sure.
Did you just get back from a sound healing conference back east? You and I were talking about that when we were putting this together. Did that happen?
Absolutely. This was this past weekend. The organization is called SAMA, S-A-M-A, stands for the Sound and Music Alliance. And as you and I have talked, sort of in the background, something for love, not for money, I've been very interested in using music for healing and wellness and spiritual enhancement. And it's nothing new. Shamans have been doing this for thousands of years. The medicine man had his little thing with his rhythms, and this whole thing wants to come from incense and beads to real medicine, where it's repeatable, and you could get a prescription to go get music therapy. And there's tremendous strides. And this was a very select group of people. There's probably about 70 people, all handpicked as the charter membership of this organization. And I encourage anybody who wants to check this out, just search SAMA on the web, and you'll get to at least a blog. And it's an emergent group. But luminaries like Joshua Leeds, Lisa Ruffell, several of all the authors that have been writing the books on music therapy. There was a lady named Barbara Hero, who was one of the great mathematicians and merging mathematics and art and music together. I met her, so it was really a thrill. And as we talked about, one of my expertise is and I've been studying frequencies. There are obviously, like anything, there are good frequencies and bad frequencies. And so a full understanding of this and a full database for people to pull from would really enhance the ability to use music for just think about your whole sound environment. What sounds are you bombarded by all day long? And some are destructive and some are good. That's why we sit down and we put our iPod on and we listen to tunes, because that's the smoother, the icing over top of whatever else we've gone through all day.
So we have sounds that we can hear, and obviously we resonate towards sounds that are soothing or appealing to us. And to be honest with you, that's not the same for everybody, because everybody operates with their own sort of set frequency or vibration. Some people really enjoy hearing, wrecking balls against the side of a building, or I mean, some people get off on that stuff. I mean, I don't necessarily get off on it, but some people do. So we choose the sounds in our environment, hopefully that we resonate with. But what about the sounds that we can't hear? What about things like EMFs and ELFs and scalar waves? What do you have to say about those?
Well, I had a very big meeting on Madison Avenue about products and frequencies. And, this whole cell phone business is going to be like the cancer was with cigarettes. It's really suppressed the rise in brain tumors and stuff like that, and they're going to keep this off radar. But eventually it's going to come out that these frequencies that we're exposed to throughout the day, and here you are, putting one right on your ear, right next to your head, and this is a radio with high frequencies. Of course you can't hear it, but it's penetrating your all the cells of your body, and it's creating resonances that we're not aware of.
Right.
And this is a kind of a scary thing coming up to us, and they're going to put on the power lines. They're going to now put internet signals on the power lines, and communications. Using that as an additional grid. And who knows what that's going to do? Back to the frequency study. That 60 cycle is very harmful.
Right.
The frequency of our power. They use 50 cycle in Europe, and it's much safer. It's much more harmonious. The perfect one would be about 53 cycles. That actually starts lining up with positive brain waves and enhancement. Nobody ever looked at this stuff until way too late. But I think as part of our next decade, we've got to review this whole issue of sustainability, and frequencies is a big part of it.
So, do you think that we have the ability now to go back in time and basically say, hey, you guys got to re-rig this stuff. You got to back engineer this because it's making people sick. I mean, do you think that there will be a business or at the most a moral imperative to do this? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
I do see that we've got to find organizations that are willing to support the studies to stand on their own 2 feet. I mean, we know, the whole Royal Rife scenario. The guy had frequencies that cured cancer, and they suppressed them. We live in a world where fluorescent lights are bad, but LED lights are good. So there's a certain amount of technology that'll be phased out and sort of quietly go away, and it'll be better for us. Just everything, and there was a whole article I saw talking about these electric vehicles and saying that there was frequencies coming off the electric motors in the cars. So there's maybe another whole thing in electric vehicles we hadn't thought about, just trying to get away from the oil. We may step into a new thing.
You're right. So we'll be immersed in these electrical fields no matter where we go.
Yeah, exactly. There's a way to stop it. It's called a Faraday shield.
Right.
Literally, you make a conductive screen box completely around whatever room you're in, and you ground it, and that will actually block the frequencies. And I think, back to this wellness thing, I think hospitals and places of psychiatrists' offices should consider these things, giving somebody a place to get away from everything. I mean, this is why we go high on the mountain into nature.
Right.
Or go to Hawaii, where the levels of this stuff are much lower, and we don't know why, but we sure feel better.
It's true. I mean, and this has all been sort of, it's like the frog that is in the pot of water that gets turned up incrementally, and next thing you know, the pot is boiling. And we started off with, mostly electrical fields based on towers, electrical towers, cancer clusters, whatever you want to call them, and relay stations. And for the most part, that was pretty much it. You had radio stations with mostly analog signals. And then, probably in the last, 25 or 30 years with the advent of digital, I mean, we've been slowly, but not even slowly, rapidly immersed in a growing field of digital noise and bombardment of frequencies. And it's changing us at a genetic level. Don't you think, Alan? Absolutely.
When you think about the cells of your body, there's a container, which is the membrane, but then there's a liquid in there. And based on some very groundbreaking work by a fellow named Dr. Emoto, he proved that you could freeze water, and the water would reveal in the crystal the frequency content or the characteristics of that liquid. Well, here we are, 70, 80, 90% salt water, and we retain these things. I mean, just think of, this is all part of the thing. You go into let's just say you have an argument with your wife for a second. When you walk out of that room, you're still resonating. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It takes a while to chill, and just think of the poor 5-year-old that's in a family that's getting a divorce, and mom and dad are fighting, and then he's yelling and screaming, and he's crying, and now that he's got to go to school, he doesn't just turn that off.
Right.
We're retaining so much, I'll say negative, harmful frequencies, and this is what causes disease. I mean, what is disease? Disease is disharmony. Health is harmony. You find yourself in a situation where life is a groove. You're happy with your life. You're someplace that's away from the madness. You're healthier. You live longer.
Right.
So there's a whole thing we could break out into. Just what is the future of medicine or non-drug medicine? Because I was grown up on the take a pill for everything generation.
Right.
And now my kids have a totally different attitude, and they're on my case. Dad, don't take that stuff. Don't worry. Look what's in the food you eat. You got to eat natural. And you know what? They're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't you think the reverse can be true too as well? Let's say you had a wonderful experience with your wife, and you walk out of the house, and all of a sudden you're dealing with this level of unheard static noise, and it's knocking you off of your center, so that experience that you had that deeply resonated with your heart or your head or whatever is now a lot more fleeting and doesn't really get inside of you as deeply as, say, maybe it did 25 or 30 years ago. I mean, can't the same be said for that?
Absolutely. No, it certainly the reverse is true. Let's say you really created a nice home environment, and you and your wife are happy, and you got the little baby, and it's just one of the great times in your life, and then you got to get in the car and get out there amongst all the other people that are very angry, and the horn honking, and you're in a big city, and all this stuff is around you. You can hold on to it to the best you can, but eventually it overcomes you.
Right.
So you want to be able to recharge throughout the day. So that's why you call your wife again. It's like, God, it's a terrible day, honey, but I really had a great time this morning. And you remind yourself of a better time or a better situation. And our hearts and our minds are so powerful. We really do create our own reality, and we need to take our power back. I heard you talking about people having to grow their own food. Things like this, just taking back some simple things in life that we get satisfaction from, that we can reflect on, and use that to dampen the negative effects of the other stuff that happens to us.
Well, one of my favorite people in the field that we're talking about, along with yourself, is Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. And one of the things I've always loved about Jeff's work is his ability to get people on that sound table of his and eventually tune their peristaltic and diastolic levels so that he can basically bring people into a sound sort of range of frequency where they are no longer in fight or flight. And he actually makes a recording of this experience on the sound table with his software, so you can go back and listen to what it sounds like to be in that place of homeostasis. Because most of the time, what you and I are talking about, you go out, you're in the world, and the horns are honking, and people are trying to catch off. I mean, you're in fight or flight. We are in fight or flight mode most of the time, and the ability to really simply be is just it's harder and harder to come by with each passing day.
Absolutely. And we're all caught up in this economic crunch that they've created. We've created. I can't divorce myself from it. I'm in the midst of it, and I just you just go back to a time when you were a kid. Remember when you were 5 years old and you had no responsibility, and mom and dad kept you in basically a family bubble away from all that stuff.
Right.
That was so you could grow up, and we need to reflect on that and still retain a little bit of the child inside of us, and not be just angry all the time or afraid all the time. It'll tear us down. It'll cut our life short by doing that.
Yeah, I think that we have to somehow maintain a sense of reverence and a sacred place within ourselves in order to to maintain that. Well, some of the work, not some of, but a lot of the work you're doing is really based around that. And I think this would be a good segue to talk about raw music and your experience with natural scale and all that stuff, because I think that if there is a tonic out there or a couple of tonics, this would be right at the top of the list. So let's jump into that. Let's talk about how you came upon this whole concept of, what we call natural scale and what that means to people.
Sure. Well, again, one of these never planned on events, a buddy of mine that worked on a Village Recorders in L.A., I had met him out at Jordy Hermel's studio out in Phoenix. He had an auxiliary place there. And I was talking about my interest in ancient structures, et cetera, and he gave me this book called The Rods of Amun-Ra, written by Wesley H. Bateman. And this was a mathematical analysis of the architecture of the Great Pyramid. So Bateman's viewpoint was, all right, whoever built this building very deliberately made everything so long and so high and at a certain angle, and this structure has been there for thousands and thousands of years. It's turned out to be durable. What was the code? What was the mathematical code? So he spent 25 years digesting everybody else who had ever been there and measured this particular doorway or that particular step, or et cetera, and summarized that into what he called Ra mathematics. And he called it Ra, sun god Ra, in honor of the fact that it was derived from the Egyptians. But it really is what we'll call universal math. It turns out that there are two key ratios that if we look around at living things and planets and galaxies and atoms, that there are structural ratios that I think the structure was there first, but when you analyze it mathematically, these ratios show up. And one of them is called phi, or phi, which is the golden mean. And this was something that we saw in the Da Vinci Code when they talked about these Fibonacci sequences. Like if right now you look at your own hand and you look at the length of the first part of your finger where the fingernail is and call that 1 unit, and then you compare that length to the next part of your finger, the difference between the two, the first one is 1 unit, the next one will be 1.618 times longer. And the same thing will happen if you look at the next part of your finger and compare that to the next section down to your palm. That'll be 1.618 times longer than that. If you bend your finger, you'll notice it starts to make like a spiral, which we call the Fibonacci spirals. It's like snail shells and ram's horns, and this shape, and it's the same shape in galaxies. And so we're built. Whoever created us in this third dimension used this ratio as a constant, and it's throughout art. Like if you look at the most beautiful faces, the ratio between the lips and the length of the nose, or the width of the nose, or how far apart the eyes are apart versus the skull, it's all, the most beautiful people have all their phi ratios perfect. And this is aesthetics. It permeates everything, and it's mathematics. How could this be? But it is. The other one that's reflected, and this is all in the pyramid mathematics, by the way. I'm sorry, this is how it got there. So the pyramid mathematics analyzed by Bateman said that these ratios were significant to the architect. The other one is pi, which, remember from junior high mathematics, pi being pi r squared. Well, pi reflects a ratio called 3.14159, and this is another what we call irrational number. They don't resolve. If you try to write it decimally, it goes on forever. And this is all about spherical geometry. So if you go back to the beginning of the Big Bang and you just say, boom, there's the Big Bang, that vibration, that event traveled omnidirectional, or spherically in all directions simultaneously, and it made a big ball. Well, that big ball expanded and hit other balls and created other stuff. So creation is that way. And as it turns out, this spherical geometry and the pi frequencies, which I'll get to in a second, that there's frequencies that are hooked onto this stuff, are actually correlate with brain waves and our electrical system in our body. So the builders of the pyramid understood this and built this monument to mathematics, and has other properties too, of course, that they understood that we are literally, the third dimension is based on pi and phi. Well, at the end of Bateman's book, he told me there would be frequencies described by this, and I went, whoa, how would you get frequencies from a building? Well, ultimately what he was talking about is the wavelengths that would be created by the dimensions of the of the structure. And so I went out to his house one day with a little electronic keyboard, and I dialed up on a little sampler, Elise's keyboard. It had a little piano sound up. Now, when every musical instrument has been made since the year 1925, the industry standardized it so that there was a frequency that was the same for all of them, so they were all tuned with each other. And that frequency is 440 cycles per second, so we call it A440. But Bateman says, no, that's not the right one. He says, you got to do something right around 424. So he dials up this frequency and oscillator. I'm listening to it and going, and then the note from the piano, I have to make it flat. So I have to lower the frequency or the pitch of the piano to match the frequency that he's telling me is one of the notes. So I do that. And then I sit there and I play the piano sound. And when I listen to it, I go, golly, this sounds like a 17th century piano. Now, I don't know what a 17th century piano was, but it was just my intuition. And he goes, you're right. And I go, what do you mean you're right? And he says, I'm telling you, this was the tuning in those days. So I went on the internet and I did my research, and sure enough, the first tuning fork that was invented in the year 1711 by a fellow named John Shore was tuned to a frequency of 423 and a half cycles, within a half cycle of this frequency that the pyramid describes. I go, wow. So this means that Mozart and Handel and all those great 17th century composers were playing on instruments that were tuned to these frequencies and composing. Well, now that I figured this out, I go, well, this is cool, but so what? Well, I sat down and I started to compose a meditation CD. And one night, I was going to do it in the standard 440. So one night, I went ahead and I retuned it, and I started to compose with the instrument tuned to this 424, which are, for our musician friends out there, you would go minus 64 cents flat from A440 to make your A424. And I started to compose, and I had the most unbelievable creative burst of energy. I wrote 3 songs in 3 hours with no errors, no mistakes. It was like I was an instant genius for a minute. And it worded out. And it was like this is the stuff we used to try to do drugs for, to get to this place, and it just, the frequencies of the music put me there. It put me in this brain state. Well, I told this to a very good friend of mine, a fellow named Dr. J.J. Hertock. He's the author of a book called The Keys of Enoch. And he agreed with me, and he says, Alan, let's prove this. I've been on this thing about resonance in ancient structures for a long time. So he sponsored a trip, and we went to the Mayan temples, and I actually measured the resonance of over 200 Mayan temples and backyards and courtyards and stuff like that, and created a database of frequency resonances, which will actually be published by the University of Mexico City. And over half of them were in this same frequencies that Bateman was talking about, was part of the pyramid. Well, with that success, we actually got a sponsor, and we went to Egypt, and I rented the Great Pyramid. I figured, okay, Bateman was theoretical. I'm going to go prove this. So we went there, and actually we rented the pyramid for 2 hours privately, and I got the place totally quiet down, and I went in there with my computers and my recording equipment, and I played a thing called pink noise, which is all frequencies simultaneously, into the King's Chamber, and then made a recording of what happened to the frequency response of pink noise being played in there, so it changes the resonance, or it reveals the resonance of the rooms. And man, I couldn't believe it, but this 424 business was the most significant frequency in this A-note range described by the pyramid. And you think about, what was the purpose of that King's Chamber in the pyramid? Well, that was the graduation room. That was the transcendent room. When you graduated from the Egyptian Mystery School, they let you go up there, now that you've learned about all your spirits and your afterworld, stuff like that. And they left you there overnight. And you would sing or hang out or lay down in the sarcophagus. And when I went there and I laid down and did my toning, I'll tell you, I went right out of my body. That thing is rigged to do this transcendent experience. And these frequencies are part of that transcendent whole experience. So now what I've done is I've determined that if we retune our music from this 440 business down to 424, it enhances the qualities of music. And I actually patented and created a technology on the website ramusic.com or rawmusic.com, where anybody could upload their Beatles or their Sting or their recordings of opera, and a digital pitch changer is built into it, and you can actually get a copy of the song or the music transposed, and if you like what happens, you can buy a copy for 99 cents. So it's like a little vending machine on the internet to change the frequencies of all the music that's been created to date, tuned to 440, into the more healing and wellness frequency of 424. And then shortly I'll add another feature. We'll be able to do A equals 432, which is the phi-based frequencies. So the 424 is really for the mind and the spirit, whereas the 432 business is really for the body. So if you're going to work on muscles or backs or spines or livers, the stuff in the range of the 432 is good. But I was really excited about this idea of mind and spirit, because I really think the spirit is senior to the mind runs the body, and the body is then the sort of the wheels in the transmission that gets us around in this third dimension. So that's where it all started, and so the raw music is the beginnings of modifying or making awareness to frequencies in music for the purposes of artistic appreciation, as well as moving on into what we talked about with the SAMA convention or the SAMA symposium, making it really an integral part of medicine and therapy.
Well, this is all incredibly exciting stuff. When you were talking about the chamber, I really got this image of like a launching pad. That this was this was like the transporter room on the Starship Enterprise.
It truly is interdimensional.
Yeah.
And they understood this a long time ago, long before our computers and our analysis, whatever. These guys knew precisely how big to make this room, and it's made out of these huge pieces of granite, and the seams and the stones are like wafer thin. I think you might be able to get a piece of paper between these stones. They're cut precisely, and there's tooling in there. There's no way these guys did this with copper chisels and hammers. There was something else going on there, Robert.
Pretty significant stuff. I know a little bit about Wes, based on some of the stories that you shared with me, and he's not some kind of run-of-the-mill guy who just decided to kind of get in on this stuff over the weekend on a lark. I mean, Wes Bateman is actually a pretty heavy cat, and maybe you can share with the people a little bit about Wes's background and what makes him so integral and interesting to this whole story.
Well, the interesting part of the story, and I shared this with you, is in the 60s, Wes set up an organization in Silver Lake over in Hollywood he called the Mind Institute, which was the mental investigation of new dimensions. And he was really telepathic, and he was a mathematical genius. He had only a high school education, and he came up with the best with him. In fact, his buddy Scott used to give him books on mathematics, not to teach him anything about math, but just for him to learn the vocabulary of mathematics so he could communicate what he was talking about to other people. Well, during these lectures at the Mind Institute, Wes got into this whole subject of UFOs. And he would actually schedule field trips where he would take people out to the desert and say, there's going to be a UFO going to fly over. And guess what? They saw UFOs. It was amazing. Well, this is like early 60s, and the attendees to his lectures, curious enough, was Gene Roddenberry and his whole staff of writers that were about to create this television series Star Trek. And the whole concept of the United Federation of Planets and the Prime Directive, which is that as another civilization, you can't disturb the development of a planet. These are all Wes's concepts. He wrote a book called Knowledge from the Stars back then. And it's all in there. Everything that's Star Trek is in Wes's source. And just to show what kind of a guy he is, at a certain point, Roddenberry approached Wes and his wife and his daughter and said, we want to make you part of this television series. And Wes goes, oh, no, this is for free. This is just truth. Don't pay me for that stuff. And he literally passed on being a very wealthy man and part of Star Trek to just go into his own pursuit and his own path.
Right.
Most folks should go, this guy was nuts. Why would he do that? But he was a man that marched to his own drum, did his own thing, and eventually the whole UFO business got a little too wacky for him in Los Angeles. So he then moved out to the desert and spent the rest of his life pretty much a hermit, doing his studies and his mental investigations and his telepathy. And unfortunately, he passed away a year ago, February. So I have a collection of his writings and a lot of interview tapes with him. And part of my mission is to really let the world know who this guy was and fortify the things he shared with me and then share them with other people.
In addition to Roddenberry and his production team, there were some other guys that were in attendance in the audience as well, right? From
that's true. There was government agents there. In fact, there was guys that showed up from the FBI, and you could always tell who they were, he said, because they always had the suits on. So Wes, in his own personality, just went ahead and he says he actually reserved seats, and he put little pieces of paper on the chair that says reserved for the FBI. Made them welcome and put them right up front, and he was just so generous. He just shared this with everybody. It was just, when we all wish we could be this place where we just live on truth.
Yeah,
that's where this guy was. It was just truth, and it wasn't about. It was great to be supported, and people did support him at the time, but it wasn't like he was going to go out and get a job or he wrote his books to share, and that gave him a little bit of income. But he was never a person that really got the economic returns on all the great things he shared with us.
Yeah, 100 years from now, Wes Bateman will probably wind up being one of these lost geniuses that
we'll view him as a luminary.
Yeah, I get.
And even for me, one night, I don't know if I shared this with you, but the first night I went to his house out in Arizona, we'd become phone buddies initially because of the book thing, and then finally I went out there to spend like the weekend and really dig down. And he said, "Hey, would you like to see a flying saucer fly over?" My eyes lit up. I went, "Whoa!" And he went into this trance state and did a mental hookup, and golly, about 8 o'clock that night, 2 craft flew over. Blew my mind. And once you've seen it, there's no coming back. And my wife and my kids, they go, "Dad, don't tell people that story. They'll think you're wacko." But I think, Robert, we're at that point where within the next 2 to 5 years, this is a non-issue. The flying saucers are real. There's going to be some sort of interaction with extraterrestrials, good or bad. I can't determine. Probably both. But the good ones, the wise ones, they're just sitting back and letting us do our thing. Because remember the Prime Directive, they're not supposed to mess with us. We're supposed to get it together on our own. We can't really pray for the day that the ETs are going to land and stop all this problem.
Right.
That's not their mission. They're more like monitors or watchers. They're watching we don't mess up the planet. If we do something really stupid that we're going to blow the planet up, there might be interference. But as far as our own social and our government and our money and our communications and our relationships, we're supposed to grow up now, because the reason we're isolated is because we're just like bad little kids that just can't get their act together. We're not ready to join the galactic community yet.
Right.
But we've got to realize it's our time. If we want to join the rest of them and celebrate the interplanetary and intergalactic communities that are out there, we've got to really take responsibility. And it's back to your initial announcements about the people in the legislature. We know they're all crooks. You can't get to be in power unless you're a crook.
Right.
And we all hope that Obama could be a Boy Scout and change the tide, but no way. His hands are tied. He can't just do it. I mean, or look at Kennedy. He thought he was a Boy Scout, and look what happened to him. So it's a nasty thing. Remember, there was that whole announcement by Eisenhower just before he left office about warning us about this military-industrial complex that's becoming a secret government.
Right.
And you see the conspiracy stuff, and even Jesse Ventura jumped into it, and they pulled his show off the air. He got 7 episodes out, and it was like, whoa, he's getting too deep. So the amount of suppression of technology and knowledge and information to keep the common man just working at his job and scraping to survive, and he's given all his power up because he's got to work. It's sad, but I think young people really get it. Young people know intuitively that there's something else, and I have a lot of faith in the human race, and there's a lot of good people out there.
I agree, Alan. I think the hardest part for most people is this sense of dislocation. It's not even a sense of dislocation. It is an utter reality of dislocation. Like right now, you're in Los Angeles. I'm in Northern California. There are people that are maybe all over the world that are listening to us. This is wonderful. We're having this great opportunity to connect and communicate and share these ideas. But at the end of the day, we're going to go back into our lives. I'm going to go hang out with whatever my milieu is here, which is certainly not as concentrated as and focused as what you and I are sharing. The same for you, and the same for the people that are listening to this program right now. And so what we have is we have these disconnected networks, and the people that are running the planet for the most part have very connected networks. Whether they're meeting, in Spain at the Bilderberger meeting in June, or they're sitting on each other's boards, or whatever, they are they are tacitly involved in working towards a particular end. And for the rest of us, we're like islands, and we're trying to build these bridges between our island-like experiences. And I would love to figure out a way where we can bridge that gap. I mean, do you think that with raw music and getting people back into natural resonance, that somehow we could actually get there faster or make it a more elegant process?
I do believe so. I envision, I've already set up the technology that, let's say there would be radio stations that would convert the frequencies of the broadcast. So that you're just driving around in your car doing everything you normally do, but the frequencies are more enhanced. It lowers the road rage. It takes down your stress. It seems like it didn't take that long to get to work this day. There's ways to, as we talked about, have pleasant experiences just in music that we can internalize, and we can quiet the disturbances and overcome the bumps of the road of the day that you have to open the mail and there's all these damn bills, or you got a bad haircut or whatever, that the little stuff, and just kind of refocus to the big stuff. We've got the whole reason we're here on this earth right now, all of us, is because it's the big show.
Yeah.
I really believe throughout history of this planet, this is one of those seminal moments where we graduate or flunk the test of humanity. And I'm all for graduating and having a better game coming this way, and it's certainly doable. I've seen the technologies, all this stuff about zero-point energy, sustainability. These are all real, and this is stuff back to what's growing your own stuff in the backyard, and just making sure you got a filter on the water that comes through your faucet, and you drink the good stuff, because golly, we're what, 200 pounds of a human being. Let's just focus that, make sure that nothing bad gets in there, sound-wise, sight-wise, food-wise, and that would already enhance our day.
Amen to that. So you have sent me some music samples, and we're going to give people the opportunity to listen to 440 scale music, and then to listen in the raw version of music. Now, you sent me five samples, and I uploaded 3 for brevity's sake, but to give people an example nonetheless. So,
Robert, which ones did you do? Did you get any of the Beatles songs in there?
I did. What I did is I took the violin, because I wanted people to hear straight violin, an instrumental, and then I took the Enya, because I wanted to show a female voice, and then I got the Beatles. Those are the 3 I chose.
Great. All right. So what we're going to hear is we're going to hear the song twice. First, it's the way it came off the CD originally. This is in the tuning where the reference frequencies of the music is where A equals 440. And then I did a digital transposition on the same music. I changed nothing except the frequency. I didn't fool with the EQ, or I didn't compress it, or I didn't doll it up. And let's just let our audience hear what happens when you have the more harmonious frequencies of music.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, Alan, is I'm going to play the original version, and we won't say anything, and then I'll play the raw version, and you and I will come back and we'll talk about that specific example, okay?
Yeah, exactly. So just for our audience, first time is the original, and the second is the raw music version.
Right, and this is the violin sample that you sent me. Here we go.
Here we go.
Wow. Well, I mean, when I first heard this down in LA at that sound healing conference that you and I connected at about 2 years ago, obviously I was in a much more intensive and immersive sound field, but even then I could still hear a resonant trail of what I experienced then. And I mean, for me, what I hear with that is twofold. Number one, it feels to me like the music has a longer tail. And when I say longer tail, it seems to me on the raw stuff, almost it doesn't last longer in terms of sound, but what I'm hearing feels like it lasts longer. And that was my biggest experience when I heard it in LA. And there's something about when I hear it in raw, and it came across again tonight, that there is almost like a natural gait to the music. It's like the gait of a horse. It feels to me like there's more of a natural gait, and I don't even know why. It just feels that way. I mean, what do you think about that? And do you get other feedback along those lines?
Well, it's we all have what we call chakras, right? We knowledge of energy centers, and they go from the top of your head to the base of your spine. And the 440 music is not tuned to any resonance along that chakra trail. But when we tune to the raw frequency, it tunes right for the target. It goes right to the heart. It stimulates the emotion. And the heart is senior to even the brain. The last thing to die is the heart. And that's where all our stuff is. So that it really, really strikes us in the chest, and we feel it better. And this then resonates through the entire body, much like if there's like a certain note in the shower that's louder than the rest. Well, the raw frequencies are all the notes that are louder in your body than the rest. It just resonates. And also remember, most likely when this music was composed, the raw tuning was what it was composed in.
Right. Right. So it's coming back to its kind of natural, its own natural state of composition.
It's smoother, and if you really, if you put on headphones, the mix opens up for some reason. It's just easier to absorb. Much like a radio station, the old AM radio station. Remember, there was if you weren't quite on the station, it was a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Really tuned it in perfectly. It got really clear. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. 440 is a little fuzzy, but the 424 business is really clear.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to listen to Enya, and we're going to go the original of Enya. And when that snippet is done, we're going to go into the raw version of Enya. Here we go.
Right.
Wow, that was really interesting.
It's more relaxed for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself having to go deeper into the sound stage with that. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, I like that.
And all we're doing is retuning the track. We're not fooling with the mix or putting more echo on it or any of that kind of stuff. It just opens up the track. You know, as an audio guy, I'm into mixing all the time. I'm on good speakers. I've got the best equipment, and it only gets better when you hear it better. But here we are in the almost like the worst case scenario, practically over the phone, and I'm still hearing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that speaks to it. Okay, so let's jump into the Fab Four. It's the last of our 3 examples.
All right. Can I cue you up just a little bit on this one?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
All right, for our audience, the one that's most significant to me is we'll hear a Beatles song. We'll hear Paul McCartney sing, and he's going to sing the song the way we've heard it, golly, for the last 30 years. We know this piece very familiar. Then it's going to convert into raw. When Paul sings the second time, listen to how much more Paul's voice sounds like the Paul we hear when he speaks, because we're very familiar with him being interviewed and stuff like that. Just how much more it's Paul on the second version. Good.
All right, here we go. Wow, that sounds like Paul McCartney before they killed him and put the new Paul McCartney in. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. As you and I are speaking right now, we're in our raw voice, our natural voice.
Yeah.
And the music tuned to 440 makes us go a little bit sharper to match the frequencies of the music, but it's not where we normally sit. You know, and there's a whole science of your voice being much like they can take a blood test and determine your health. You can actually take a voice analysis and determine the frequency responses of your voice, and it can be from that analysis, and this is Jeffrey Thompson and Sherry Edwards and a bunch of other folks that have been doing this for a long time and know a whole lot more than me, that they can say, gee, you need more G note or you need more E note, because if in a healthy state you would have an equal amount of frequencies in your voice, but when they do analysis, finds out there's what we'll call frequency deficiency. Much remember the old idea of vitamin deficiency anemia? There's such as frequency deficiency anemia. And you can now select tones or music or retune music to fortify the weakened frequencies and bring you back to a better state. And you know, I visited the day when you get up in the morning and you get on Skype or you go on your computer on the phone and you go, hi, this is Robert Phoenix. I'm just doing a voice test. Do my analysis and send me back my chart. And that recording goes into a computer, spits it back, and then you go, well, today, Robert, you really need to listen to something in the key of E, but it better be in raw E because that's better whatever. So then you go to iTunes and it gives you 4 songs that are in the key of E, but all retuned, and you just put them on your iPod and you listen to them when you're on your way to work, and it'll make you feel better.
I'm all for that. That sounds brilliant. So
it'll penetrate our culture as this stuff goes, and it's not, you know, back to this instant brain. I mean, here we are talking to people worldwide. It would take forever to write the book and have them read the book, and 10 years from now I'd be an old man before they ever get to it. But we have a chance to talk to them directly right now. This is so exciting. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, there were times where I would go into like a Barnes and Noble or Borders, and I'd see all these books, and I'd get really stressed out because one of them didn't have my name on it, right? And then I started writing a blog, and I started doing this, and all of a sudden it just dawned on me. It's like, this is the new media. I mean, this is. I mean, I was applying kind of an older standard to whatever it is that I'm doing, and I got reconciled really quickly once I got there, and I don't have the same kind of whatever that was. It was driving me to see my name in immortality or whatever. So no, I totally get that. One of the things, I mean, in an ideal world, Alan, it would be great if we converted everything to raw music. First of all, it'd make you rich, number one. But number two, it would allow us to have a natural experience with music and kind of reset our internal clocks or our internal metronome, so to speak. That would be great. That'd be wonderful. And then we could have musical instruments based on raw, and our radio stations tuned to raw. I mean, we could really get back into a raw state, but that's not going to happen, and right now at least. But people can go to your website, and let's say they don't want to convert their entire collection, right? But let's say there's about maybe 6 CDs that they really, really like. Maybe they're meditative, maybe they're something that they play along with a lot, but those 6 CDs could be like touchstones for them when they convert to raw. Am I correct?
That's correct. And, the technology that's on the website, it's www.ramusic.com, rawmusic.com, is only the beginning. Shortly, we're on the website actually have a subscription service where you can get a whole lot of conversions at a much lower price, and also allow the ability for anybody to listen to internet radio in streaming raw. So there'll be the tool there where you could just dial up classical and have classical all day long just playing in raw music.
Oh, that's awesome. That's all. Would that be a local application? Like, could you convert, like, say, a Shoutcast station or a Live 365 station into raw on your own computer, or would that have to sit on their server?
Probably the way. Well, again, I'm trying to keep it simple. The first solution I thought of was to put the technology in the raw website. So you would just click to the raw website, and then you would open up whatever it is you dial up internet radio on, and just pick a station, and it'll just come streaming through through my website. In the future, I could see software and tools to do this with, but at this point, I'm not Microsoft, so I don't have the budget to just throw 50 guys at this and get it done by Friday.
Right. No, that's actually a pretty elegant solution. They go to your website, they put it in the URL, and then it comes out raw. I think that's.
And I could see, once I get a little bit of recognition, approaching like iTunes and putting the raw converter in there and stuff like that. I could see that happening very easily.
I think it's great. I think we're living in time where we're dealing with raw foods. Why not raw music? I mean, it's a good fit. So
raw foods. Wes and his daughter Deanna, out in the desert, came up with this idea of actually playing the music to their plants, all their fruits and vegetables, and they got bigger, healthier stuff. So there is an area we can call ag raw tones, where there's music for plants as well as there's music for people.
I like that.
This could be optimized, and golly, all of us just need to get to this wonderful place of dreaming and creating the better world, and stop fighting that we need new tires and gas is going up, and the IRS is we owe money. I mean, they really got us by the balls. I'm sorry. Somehow we got to get out of this.
Here's my thoughts on that, Alan. I think that if we really could, experience something along the lines of what I would call third stream. And third stream would be there's our reactive. There's an environment that stimulates us for better or worse, right?
Yep.
And then there's the reactive mode that we're in. So so the environment itself is first stream. The reactive mode is second stream, and third stream, it comes from a very different place. We're not in the environment. We're not reactive. We're in a different zone, and now we can come at our challenges and our struggles from a different perspective. And I think what raw music and some of these things that you and I are talking about tonight can keep us in that state. I had Alan Tower on a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I know you know Alan, and we talked about natural resonances. So it's along these same lines of what you and I are talking about, and it's really giving us this field, this sort of really perceptible and almost tactile field where we can come at our life's challenges from a very different perspective, and I think this is really what we need right now.
I agree, and the one of the great repetitive mantras I always think of is the Chinese philosophy. It says if you have to move a mountain, it's only still one stone at a time. Just one small something that makes tomorrow a little better is already progress. It's when it keeps getting worse that we're in trouble.
Yeah, I hear you. So let's do this.
A couple songs, a couple of your favorite songs in the raw frequencies. I have two parents that approached me that have autistic children. And we got all this drug issues with the kids in school, et cetera, et cetera. So I had the mom give me a CD of the kids' favorite music, and I converted it into the raw frequencies and gave it back to her. And she said that now it's almost like sonic medicine. When the kid's getting freaked out, she puts on the CD, it pulls him right back into the proper space. He gets grounded, and now every day when she goes to school, she puts the CD in the car on his way to school, and it really gets him prepared to go into school, and his functionality is really enhanced.
Wonderful.
This is just a one-person thing. I really need research. Need to work with organizations that work with children. But I got another guy in Utah that's working with guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, trying to get them keyed out instead of keyed in.
Yeah.
They've got experience, and we're trying to pull them back into remembering the life they were in before they just went through this horrible experience. And playing them their favorite musics in raw is really helping a lot. So let's just say that some guy is out there and his favorite band was this band, and now we convert it to raw, and he gets to hear that music again, and for some reason it pulls him back into, I remember how it was before I went, I remember that person I was, and it helps them get back to an earlier time. And it's subtle stuff, but very powerful.
That's wonderful. That's so wonderful. Well, I'm going to convert some Barry White to raw, and I'm going to take it into the bedroom, and I'll let you know how that goes.
Hey, if that works, then you got a blog. Also, on the Raw Music website, we also have a social community, so I invite everybody to come and join. It's not a heavy-duty Facebook thing. It's just 100 people are there right now. It's just us guys and girls, but it's like-minded people, and we can share, and as these various experiences come up or new ideas come up, I go all the time there, and I'm very open to being part of a community of trusted people,
Yeah, and I can speak from experience, Alan. You're so incredibly accessible and really giving of your time and your heart and your spirit. I'm going to just open up the phone lines here. If anybody's out there and you want to give a shout, and you want to say hi to Alan or ask some questions, the call-in number is 347-308-8995. 347-308-8995. This would be a good time. We got about a half an hour left. We can take 3 or 4 calls if you're a musician or a singer or you're interested in this technology and want to learn more about it. It's a great time to ask Alan a question or make a comment. So 347-308-8995. Don't be shy. Chime on in. In the meantime, I want to talk to you about this. You and I have already talked about this, but the people out there that are listening may not be aware of what I consider to be the greatest fight scene in the history of filmdom, with Roddy Piper and Keith David in They Live. And one of the first things that I asked you about when you and I got together down in L.A. at that little cafe was my profession, first of all, for the love of the movie, and second of all, for that epic fight scene. And then you told me some things about that fight scene that I thought were really interesting. So I'm going to set the stage for it, then you can do the backfill. This fight scene has got to be the most realistic, and then I'm going to put quotes around that because Alan's going to elaborate on that. The most realistic fight I've ever seen in filmdom. Number one, because it feels real. Number two, because it goes on for such a long time. And I never get tired of watching it. I'm not a huge fan of violence, but there's something about this fight scene that really stands out. So Tell the people out there kind of what was going on while those guys were doing that.
Well, sure. Well, if you remember, Roddy Piper was actually a wrestler, and so John Carpenter, the director and creator of They Live, was introduced to the whole world of WWF from Alice Cooper, another buddy of his, and he just was fascinated by the theatrics of the wrestling, and he befriended Roddy. So at one point, Roddy said, "Well, I'd love to be in a movie," and so John thought he was just the perfect persona. He just has to be Rowdy Roddy in the movie. It's not like he has to be an actor. He just has to be himself. It was a role almost perfect for him. So now we've got a real fighter in a real guy that knows what he's doing. And Carpenter was all into the theatrics of fighting. And so when it came to this fighting scene, he talked to Keith, and he says, "I want you guys to really fight. And this is not going to like pull the punches. I'm going to have two masseuses here. I got the tables. I'm going to treat you guys like major athletes. I want a real fight." And that's why that thing is so protracted. They are punching each other. They're getting bruised. They're hurting after this stuff's done. And for us to watch this in this scene, as you said, it's one of the most unbelievably realistic because it's real. It's not fake. They're not pulling the punches. They're getting knocked down. They're hitting the ground. There's not pads around. They're not taking it soft. And Roddy really is a fighter, so he knows how to take the falls, and he worked with Keith on this stuff. And it's brutal.
It is visceral. I mean, that fight scene borders on almost like German expressionism. I mean, it's that in your face. And so now, what was Keith David's like? What was his feeling about this? Was he like all gung ho, or I mean, did he say I need like $5,000 more or what?
Oh, he was totally into it. Between Roddy and John, they said, "Hey man, you let's do this." And Keith was totally with it. Remember, he's just working with John Carpenter is amazing. He is just a consummate director, and he has a way of persuasion, and also a way of you all want to get on the program with him. If he wants to do something, we all want to do it. And so Keith got on board, and they did their thing. And that movie still holds up today. This whole idea of the potential conspiracy between aliens and the affluent and leaving the rest of us out in the street to figure it out, and possibly beaming frequencies that keep us stupid, and just down to consume and sleep and, function and don't pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain. Those are seminal things. That was made in 1986. He wrote that probably in 85. It's a great movie.
That movie I feel like is more resonant now than the first time I saw it was probably in the late 90s, and because it came and went very quickly at the theaters, and
the whole idea of the tent cities and the homeless.
I'm telling you, Alan, this movie is really prophecy and social prophecy, and we're seeing it all come to fruition now. I mean, there's even the thing I love about Carpenter is like he's talking that one guy who plays the turncoat in the movie. He starts talking about, I hear things are getting real bad up in El Cerrito. I got a friend in El Cerrito, and it's just amazing. And hacking the cable access and they have the tent cities, and people are out of work, and there's this amazing disparity between the upper class and the middle class, economic disparity. I mean, this film is eerily prophetic in terms of our time right now.
I was very gifted. I was and blessed to go to the school of John Carpenter, to sit in a room with him for weeks on end writing music for his movies. And I brought all the technology in the studio and whatever musical chops I had, and he brought the movie. And he's a trained musician. His father was a concert violinist, and he plays the violin and the keyboard very well. And they had a rock and roll band called the Coupe de Ville, which was Carpenter, Tommy Lee Wallace, and Nick Castle were his buddies at USC when he went there. Rock band. He was a bass player in that band. So he's just a multi-talented Renaissance guy. He writes them, he makes movies. And really his movies are timeless. I mean, go back to the original Halloween, 1977, I think it was shot.
Yeah.
The only thing that dates it is the cars. But the choice of clothing and the Anywhere USA and the way it works, It's today. In fact, you know, the greatest movie he ever made is The Thing. And you know, the Thing is still in the top 1,000 movies of all time. I think it's like, I just looked at it on IMDb. It's like 800. Still holding up, and that was another marketing disaster, where Universal Studios had made John Carpenter's The Thing and Steven Spielberg's E.T. simultaneously. And when it came time to market the show, they had to decide, are we going to go with the good monster in E.T. or the scariest monster ever, The Thing? And so the marketing department just sort of dropped the ball. But you know, they let it go. I don't say they dropped the ball. They gave it so much juice, and they go, no, we're making billions of dollars over this E.T. We're just going to put all our juice into that.
Yeah.
Same thing. I was at a screening, you know, in a theater down in Santa Monica last year, and I watched that movie, and the only thing, again, that dates the movie is the technology. Like the radios are these big walkie-talkies instead of little cell phones. It's the only thing. The computers and the technology are the only thing that he couldn't have predicted. But the choice of clothing and the helicopters and the way that people function and the human interactions are timeless.
Yeah. You know, the original version of The Thing from the 50s, I think, didn't Howard Hawks direct that?
Howard Hawks did the original, and that came from a short story. He told me what it's called. I can't remember right now, but it was originally a short story from this Pulp Fiction world.
Yeah.
Howard Hawks was inspired to that to do the movie, and then Carpenter was so thrilled to be able to do the remake. And I understand they're making the prequel to The Thing now.
Oh boy.
So that whole story of the Norwegian expedition that the Thing attacks first, and then the one dog is running away that's got the Thing in it.
Yeah.
So it's everything before that. I hear they're making that now.
Interesting. Well, the Howard Hawks version was really frightening. I mean, you know, it's probably about maybe one of half a dozen films from the sort of the black and white era that really grabbed my attention in terms of, you know, scaring the piss out of me.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I didn't think that Carpenter could, you know, turn up the volume on it, but he sure as hell did on The Thing.
He maxed it out.
Yeah, the shape-shifting capacity of that thing was just creepy. And yeah, so that is a great, you know, Carpenter has had a great career. The thing that I always wondered about him was the Mars film. You know, what happened there, and why was that not, I mean, did the studio get involved in that and, like, you know, cut his budget short? Or I know they did that with the vampire film with James Woods. I think he was supposed to get more money for that, and he had to finish that up with less of a budget. But so, you know, what happened with that Mars movie with Carpenter?
You know, to be honest with you, Robert, I don't know the details, but there was sort of a change of the guard in Carpenter's world about 1990. So I was in for the 80s trip, and then about 90-91 he did that television show called Body Bags.
Right.
And there was some new management and some new relationships. So I wasn't around for that stuff to really dial it up, but I think history says that those were not as good as his works in the 80s. He just didn't, for whatever, the producers, the money, the actors, the situation, they didn't crystallize like the stuff when he was just left alone. I mean, I think that's the trick with a guy like that, is you've got to just leave him alone and let him do his thing. You'll get a better product than trying to overmanage, micromanage, budgetize, do anything. Just let him do his thing. You're going to get something great. Let him go, you know? Yeah,
you know, he was really in that really sweet groove that all those guys coming out of USC had, Milius and, you know, Lucas and Coppola and Spielberg and, of course, Carpenter. I mean, that was a time when, you know, those guys had carte blanche. They left them alone. They made the studios a lot of money. And then the bean counters got involved. Yep. And started to change the landscape of their movie. But he had a great run from probably about 82 to about 90, 91. That was a good run for him.
Well, actually, you know, his first movie that really got traction was Assault on Precinct 13, so it really starts there.
Yeah.
Then he did Fog, and then he did Halloween and the Fog. Halloween first, then the Fog. And then from there he was launched. The first movie I was with him was Escape from New York. That was 1980. And so that was my first film score with him and my first introduction to him. And he was so casual. We were literally, you know, I was doing the Star Trek movie, so I knew somebody from the Star Trek that was the editor that went on to do the movie for Escape from New York, and they introduced me. And he just came over to the house, and literally was just kind of set up in the dining room. It wasn't like today where I've got all this beautiful studio and acoustic stuff like that. And he just sat down, and we're the same age, and we kind of resonated together. And he says, "Yeah, let's just do it." And it was no big agents, it was no big promotions, it was just guys.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of that innocence is gone now with all the money involved.
No, it's become such a metric-driven industry and business and enterprise that it's almost impossible. But that's across the board, Alan. It's not just movies. It's the music industry, which you and I know about. It's publishing. It's like, you know, if you have 5 million hits per month on your website, you'll get a book deal. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I heard that they've now be able to predict the success of a movie based on Twitter. A 97% accuracy.
Wow.
So forget these guys at Disney that are shooting the movie with 3 endings and testing audiences and all this other stuff. Just by the buzz, they'll be able to tell what's going to happen.
That's amazing.
This is the stuff I could never imagine. I wouldn't have got it. I still don't get it in some ways. Although, you know, I'm involved in the internet. We all have our internet presence now. Just as a side note, talking about websites, I also have alanhowarth.com, AlanHowarth.com, and that's all my film stuff. And I have a CD store where you can buy CDs from me, and I autograph them all to the fans. And everything that I've worked on to date is available there, even though a lot of it's out of print or never been released. It's just my own little private store. So I'll be putting more and more stuff as we go there. And then the rawmusic.com, ramusic.com, is the place to go see the frequencies and have the conversions and learn more about that and join our social network. So that's my focus for my internet presence. And I'm just starting on a film right now called Something Wicked. It turns out this is a thriller, not a horror movie, but a thriller. And it's this lady, Brittany Murphy, that passed away in December. It's her last movie.
Oh, boy.
So
wow.
It's really the memorial dedicated to her. She's not the lead, she's the second in it. But I just got the movie on Friday night, saw it for the first time, and I'm meeting with those guys to spot the movie tomorrow. So, you know, I'm having the most fun as far as what can I do for a day gig. Writing music for a film. That's just really the artist in me is successful when you ask me to make music for images. You know, that's the old painter. Finally found something to do with his music and his painting at one time, and that's the idea of scoring movies.
Yeah. Along those lines, Alan, from your own professional experience, I know that you were employed by an electronic gaming company in Northern California because of your special effects and your soundtracking expertise, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I was made an executive at a very famous large publisher with a 2-letter name. And
right. We don't have to talk about that, but here's where I'm going with this. Okay.
Yeah.
For many people, this would have been the pinnacle of their career in some ways, right? This is the type.
It was a very heady position. It was big bucks and a lot of power.
Yeah, big bucks, a lot of power, and we're talking like you know, money in the bank every other week, right? I mean, we're talking good money, benefits, money in the bank. All you got to do is show up, turn on the machine, and listen to what they have to say, and make some, you know, interesting sounds, some interesting effects, and blah 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 blah. Do what you're told, and you know, this is the type of job, you know, that takes you into your golden years. However, you're no longer there. You're down there, and you are following your instincts. You're following your muse, and you're happy. Am I right?
That's correct, Robert. You know, all the wives will hate me when I say this, but all the security and all the good stuff that comes with a corporate thing like that, my experience there is I started to look forward to lunch.
Yeah.
And that was the first indicator. I started like feeling like high school again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whatever's going on here, God bless everybody, but and it's not their fault. I mean, it's just what it is. But I was an executive. I was on hire, fire, schedule, budget. I wasn't being an artist anymore. In fact, it was kind of a waste of my time to try to be into the artist mode. That was not my job and my responsibility. So eventually I just approached him and I says, you know, I spent 30 years getting good at this one thing, and I know everything there is to know about it, but I'm just not getting traction here, where I feel that what I've got to offer is what you guys need. So let's not do this anymore. And I moved back to LA and jumped back into the independent world. Luckily, I've got a little bit of track record, and I've done it for a while, so people know who I am. But for all those kids out there that love sound and music and trying to find stuff to do, I would recommend still that you guys look at video games. The video game industry is bucks up. You know, you got a game like World of Warcraft. It's got 70 levels. They've just gone public. You know, this game has, I don't even know what the numbers are now, but it costs like $9 a month to play, and there's got to be 10 million people playing.
Wow.
That's 1 million a month coming into this game right now. It's astronomical. So there's a huge opportunity, and you know they're you know where the budgets in movies are shrinking, their budgets are expanding, and there's just a lot of opportunity, and all young guys that are just anxious to jump on the technology and take advantage of it. And you know this technology that's in the video game consoles. A little sidebar: the PlayStation 3 was coming online when I was there, so I had the inside scoop. And this chip that's in the PlayStation 3 was a joint venture between Sony and Toshiba, and they call it a cellular chip. So there's actually the equivalent of 16 Pentium 4 chips in one chip that do parallel processing. So the technology is capable of rendering a Pixar quality animation with 7.1 surround sound on the fly. Like, we're not even close to tapping that technology. I just saw that Toshiba put the same chip in their high-end LED flat-screen TVs to convert 2D to 3D video in real time on the fly.
Wow.
I mean, there's the technology curve is beyond anybody's ability to keep up. They're making chips that'll take years for us to really apply them, but the stuff's here today.
Wow.
And I'm fascinated by this stuff. I love all that technology. I never get tired of that stuff.
Well, you know, I'm glad that you, you know, had a face-to-face meeting with yourself in that environment, and then you decided that for the sake of your soul and the well-being of your future self, that you decided to move on and move back to the places that brought you joy and happiness and a sense of discovery. And I think that that's a great story in and of itself, Alan.
Well, you know, I'm riding the same wave we're all on. I'm on the independent world. Sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's not cool.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I got to tell you, Robert, I have no fear in me because I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm not in the wrong place. I mean, God help anybody who's doing whatever they're doing and they're just hating it. I'm telling you, you just got to, like, do something else.
Push off the shore, man. I mean, you know, just push off the shore and get into the rapids and get into the river. I mean,
yeah.
I'm in the same, you know, I'm in a different boat, but I'm in the same river, Alan. You know, I'm doing what I love, and I'm living on faith and fumes. I'm getting by, and hopefully, you know, I can take this experience to another level and you know, and do what I love. And I think that, you know, we all have an inherent. This is my philosophy, just as an aside. We all have an inherent plan. You know, and there's kind of a broad range spectrum of that plan, you know, and there's kind of a micro sort of transmission of that plan. But either way, there's kind of the latitude to achieve that plan. And I think if we allow ourselves to surrender to that blueprint that we all have inside of us, that plan, whatever that is, that the more that we trust that, the more that we are able to feel comfortable in our own skin and have faith and trust, and then allow life to co-create with us. I mean, isn't that along the lines of your experience?
Absolutely, Robert. You know, I feel very blessed in this life. I didn't, as we started in the beginning, I didn't have a direction. I didn't say I want to be a film composer when I was in high school or college. I was just doing what felt right. And somehow I meandered through life and wound up here. And how many of these kids go to school and they're forced to take a major? So, okay, I'm going to be an economist. So they graduate and they get a job at an accounting firm and they hate it. Well, then That's fine. You're allowed to hate it. Take what you know and reapply it to another opportunity. Go ahead and start being an apprentice producer for a film, or get involved in advertising, or start figuring out how to be an efficiency guy because you're all about economy. There's got to be some application of your passion, and because there's so many of us, there's got to be something for everybody. The variety pack is huge, and you know, so many of us, myself included, are looking to how could we make money with the internet. Well, if you solve that answer, then you don't even need to get the car and leave anymore. You just need to keep your internet connection on, and you're going to have something going. I mean, that's why I'm drawn to having my website and the stores and stuff like that. And you know, I was doing some seminars, which was a lot of fun too, for raw music. We were just doing it to turn people on, but you know, I'd sell some CDs to them and pay for the gas. And I was working with a very nice lady named Christina Grimm. And what we were doing, we touched on this earlier, but I want to underscore this. Singing in the raw frequencies is healthy. So it stimulates the natural vibrations in us. So it's pretty easy. You know, actually, I should put some tones up on the website, and people could sing off it. But just most likely, if you just sing with no reference, you'll already be there. If you sing in your natural voice, like right now, if I just go I'm probably there. It feels good. Well, just letting that vibration in your body, just toning, just going through some focus. Because the other thing is, when you make a single note like that, all the vibrations come to a single point. It gets you focused, and there's something that happens after you do that that's very good for you.
Yeah.
It costs nothing.
Yeah. You know, one of my great teachers along these lines has been Wayne Perry, and I know you know Wayne from a number of conferences. And the first time I got into Wayne's toning sessions, let me tell you, it's one of the most liberating things I ever experienced in my life. And to this day, it still sticks with me. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's about, really, I mean, what are we talking about here, Alan? We're talking about finding our own tones, right? I mean,
that's right.
We are really just sounding notes across a canvas of universal experience, and to be able to hone in on that, to find one's own natural resonance and one's own natural frequency is really what it's all about.
Absolutely. You're talking about natural resonance. I didn't give you this data. So we had confirmation that the resonance of the pyramid is in the raw frequencies, the Mayan temples in the raw frequencies, the original tuning forks were in the right frequencies. You know, I'd done all this film work, so I worked with a lot of sound effects. So I started analyzing the tonalities of whale songs and dolphins and birds, and they're already in this tonality also. Their natural voice is the same thing. So what we're talking about is some universal frequencies that really the third dimension in life exists on, and we just made this silly error of picking the wrong standard in the year 1925, so all the music that's been made since then is not optimized. Some people could say it might have been a conspiracy. I don't know, but we can certainly easy enough to get back to it and
all right.
Utilize our daily life.
And the way that you get back to it is by going to rawmusic.com, where you can upload for 99 cents a track. Now listen, some of you people out there are very into meditative music. You're into ambient music, or you're into sacred chant. At 99 cents a track, all you need is maybe about 4 tracks, because some of these tracks are upwards of 20 minutes long. At 99 cents a track, that's a bargain. You can recalibrate 4 of your favorite pieces of music for $4. And those pieces of music, after they come through Alan's technology to get it back to its natural resonance and natural state, its natural scale, will go deeper and will send you further into your experience around that music. So if you're a healer, if you use music for meditation or massage, or your own personal use to go deeper into your own experience, highly recommend it. When I experienced it down in LA, I had a big sound bubble over my head, and let me tell you, there is a difference. I mean, you feel it. It is in your cells. The cells are the first thing that feels this music, and then it moves outwards, because your ears are used to the ear candy. They're used to hearing the highs and lows based on a resonant relationship that they've had with the music for years. But when you hear it in the raw sound, it comes from the inside out. And ultimately, the ears are the last. I mean, for me, it was the ears that were the last thing to get it. But once the ears got it, it was complete. So please go to his site, and if you want to take advantage of this, this is a great way to deepen your collection and your work. Am I on here, Alan? Am I making sense?
Yeah, you make sense. Just a little caveat. If you do have music from ethnic tribes and stuff like that, you probably are already there. You don't need to convert it. Didgeridoos and Tibetan bowls and Indian sitars most likely are not on the Western Standard. They're on the Eastern Standard, and the Eastern Standard is already there.
All right. There we go. So we have just kind of a slight clarification there. But if you're on the Western side of things, you can go check it out. Anything new you got coming up, Alan, in the future that you want to tell people about?
Well, actually, you mentioned the sound bubble. I just want to talk about this for a second. As an extension of all these frequencies, all this film work, I started a project in the mid-'90s called Dimension Audio, and we wanted to talk about how could you have sound come over speakers that is as good as what you hear in reality. And just a quick sketch on that. So the design spec is, well, sound comes from everywhere. It's omnidirectional. When you sit and listen you're in a restaurant, you hear the dishes on one side and the cash register on the other, and the kitchen behind you, and the fan over your head. So sound is everywhere. So what would it take? And the answer was we'd put a speaker everywhere. So here in my room, I'm sitting with a room that actually has 48 individual speakers independently on channels, and I can play a 48-channel mix into this, and I'm completely immersed. Well, I did this originally for entertainment, but it dawned on me that what I've created also is a sound healing chamber. So conceivably in the future, I envision these 3D sound systems being applied in conjunction with the raw frequencies and the natural healing tones, where people can have transformative experiences. And then also I have low frequency transducers built into the floor, so the whole floor vibrates with low frequencies, much lower than a subwoofer. And probably some of you have seen these sound tables where the low frequency is played right directly into your body. Well, we call this vibroacoustics, and this is another cutting edge of how to apply sound for healing, is in these low frequencies vibroacoustically, all the way down to the brainwave frequencies. It's just a wide open field, and just to underscore, please go. I should check out the SAMA group, because this is the coolest group of people I've seen in a long time. No flakes. Everybody was totally top of their game in all different diversities, and this wants to really integrate music and sound into a modality that can be used in a positive way and responsibly. So this is a very exciting times in this idea of sound healing, and I really appreciate, Robert, you letting me be on tonight and talk about this stuff, and I want to come back soon.
Yeah, we'll have you on, Alan. So it's always great to connect with you, whether it's here or in person. I always enjoy my time with you, and your wealth of knowledge and the ability to kind of get outside the box is something I always appreciate as well. So just keep up the good work, my friends, and we'll orbit back here sometime in the not so distant future.
Absolutely, and like I say, right now I'm doing the Something Wicked movie that'll probably be out in the fall, and I've sent word out to John Carpenter. He's got a new movie called The Ward, and I let him know that if he was interested in working together, I'd love to do it. We'll see what he has to say. And then I just did a sound system for the military, of all things. I did a 3D visualization for the U.S. Army for an engineering group, and so I'm as diverse as I can be in this whole what do you do with sound and sound reproduction. But I'm having a blast. I encourage everybody to find their calling, find their passion. Unfortunately, it may not pay off today, but at least if you get started on it, and at least if it's a hobby or a backfill or something, that there's some way you express who you are and what you want to be, you got to do it. Because at the end, when we finally give up this body and we go back to the spirit world, there's a review. What did you do with that life? What did you learn? And certainly for the moms and dads that we all are, someday, now or forever, I believe that one of the first questions at the top of the thing is did you have any children, and if so, what are they doing? What kind of people did you leave after yourself? What kind of lessons did you learn? And life is for lessons, so let's just keep learning.
Right on. All right, Alan. Well, listen, you take care of yourself, and we'll see you again real soon, and just keep up the good work. We love what you're doing, and I certainly am a fan and a believer, and am happy to know you.
Thanks, Robert. I really appreciate being on your show tonight.
All right, you take good care. That's Alan Howarth.
All right, bud.
And he's the man. He's the Hollywood sound effects master. In fact, we didn't really talk about this, but Alan has the probably the biggest selling. I hate that. Alan has probably one of the biggest, largest selling albums in terms of sound effects of all time with the GMP Crescendo Real Hollywood Sound Effects. Next week, you don't want to miss the show. It's Alexis K. Tyler. And if you know her name, you know what I'm talking about. It's going to be wild. We're going to get into it. We're going to get down. We're going to get down to the first chakra, the second chakra. We're going to feel it. And don't miss this show. It's going to be one for the ages. Trust me. All right. So until then, have an incredible week. Stay healthy. Stay positive. Stay clear. Stay true to your own signal. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to Free Association Radio. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay open to what's possible. Yeah.